Let's say Amanda gets through Felicia Spencer. She's favored to do so. Okay. What do you do then? And that's always an interesting question, and it's a hard problem to solve. And that's really not our job to solve it, but for fun of talking about it, what do you do then? Look, becoming too good for your own good is a very real thing, and that's nothing an athlete should ever and would ever observe. They're going to go out, they're going to score as many points as they can in the time allotted, and they're going to go home. Who's next is for who's next to figure out, but it's a real thing. And it's not just Amanda. You could also apply this to JJ, right? In many ways, where an athlete wants to be paid based on their accomplishments has never been the business and simply never will be. That's not sustainable, and you can't do business that way. It has to be based on what they bring in, just like anything else. Now, the reason I bring that up is there are a few athletes over time, and very few, who can negate that rule, who can sell by themselves. I mean, I could bring Michael Jordan into it. Michael Jordan was so great that it didn't matter if he was playing somebody that you knew he was going to run over and have absolutely little resistance in doing so. You wanted to witness that greatness just because. Very real thing. Mike Tyson would fall into that category. Mike Tyson got to a point, guys, where he was knocking people out so quickly that Don King, his promoter, had to team up with DirecTV, the distributor, and come out and say, if Mike Tyson does not get out of the first round in this next fight, we'll give you half of your money back. It was a very real thing. And as you know, with boxing, one of the predominantly glaring problems with boxing is that it's just main event heavy. There's never even a featured co-main event, and the undercard is so boring that people that even bought live tickets at a premium price don't even come to watch it. It's just one of these things, and it's not because the talent isn't there. The sport itself is painfully long to watch. 12 rounds is just a ridiculous amount of time to watch anything. So you have to have the story. Why are we here? What is this about? What is the significance to this contest? That's called promotion. And the promoters in boxing have always just put that on the very front end, which is the main event. So it's just one of these tough things to get anybody to watch. And then when you do get to the main event, largely, unless you're there live, this now involves a party. Most people that were watching Tyson on pay-per-view were hosting some kind of a party. DirecTV was not in everybody's house like it is today. And I know that's a broad stroke. You have many different platforms, but to the extent that you had DirecTV, knew how to push the buttons, knew how to buy a pay-per-view, you were now in a select few people. So all of your friends were kissing up to you and being nice and what can I bring over just to get the invite to be able to witness the Tyson fight. So now you got this whole party. The fight lasts a fraction of as long as the walkout did. You suffered through all the other fights on the card that you had no idea who was fighting, and more importantly, why they were fighting. You get less than 3 minutes of action, and then you got to look around your house at this mess you got to clean up and hope that everybody gets the hint. Here's your hat, what's your hurry type deal. So, I mean, this was actually a business problem, but it didn't stop people from coming in droves to watch Mike Tyson. So you got Mike Tyson and Michael Jordan. Boxing is said that they've only had two stars through history that can sell on their own, which is Mike Tyson and Oscar De La Hoya. Regardless of who the opponent was, they were going to do great numbers. Why De La Hoya, why Tyson, and why Jordan go into one category, and that exact same level of greatness really has never transferred to any other athlete, is something in a phenomenon that I have yet to be able to identify enough to rhetorically explain it. But I can recognize the other side of the coin. I could look at Roy Jones Jr. Argument for the greatest boxer of all time. No argument, greatest boxer of all the 90s. Not of 1991, not of 1997, not of 1999, all of the 90s. This guy was incredible, but he was so good. Even though he was handsome, even though he was charismatic, even though he had a great backstory, he was trained by his pops, he was a second generation, he was an Olympian, got a medal for this country, robbed at the games. I mean, he had an incredible story. He checked every single box. He did his part, but no opponent could create an allure that they were the one to beat him. And no opponent, quite frankly, even came out and said, I'm the one that's going to beat him. I'm the one that he's running from. They just said, I'm the one that should be given the opportunity. Went out, fall down, everybody leaves. You come back for the next one. It was just one of these spots where it was very hard to explain. And I only would suggest for you that Amanda Nunes is approaching that. That would be very unfair, terribly unfair to her. And then I've heard people say, well, look, if she gets past Felicia Spencer, there's simply nothing left for her to do. She should retire and move on. What kind of message is that? No, look, there could be an issue here, but that's not her problem. She's done her part. There does still become a question, well, what do you do? What do you do to captivate people's mind? And we've seen the participants in those divisions historically do a terrible job. When Chris Cyborg was leading the march, also doing everything right, much like Amanda, nobody wanted to step up to her. It was a fear factor, it was a respect factor, sure, but from a competitive standpoint, which is what drives interest, it just wasn't there. Guys, that was only a year ago. So if it wasn't here a year ago, what's to say it's going to be here now? Now you got the Bullet that's saying, I'm more than willing to do it, but I have found my weight class of 125. Come and do it down here. Maybe the Bullet could be talked into something different and sliding up. We'll see how all of that works. But the Bullet can't be the only one that can fog a mirror out there with some level of courage and some level of storytelling ability. It just can't be that way. And it does appear that they're starting to put Amanda in a position. And by they, us, the fans, the viewer, the media alike, are starting to put her in a position meant to be respectful, meant to be an acknowledgement of how great she is and what a great job she's done. I don't fault anyone. It seems like we're all doing our job to recognize Amanda as one of the rares, and I'm talking athletes. You can then classify it as fighter, but one of the rares does make me reflect back to a meeting that Dana had held with a two-time Olympic boxer, two-time Olympic gold medalist boxer. And I don't have the foggiest idea what her name is, but at the time when she was coming up, I thought that was a little bit weird, but now I'm starting to see it. And I don't know that Zuffa boxing is going to go on and be a real thing, but as I do reflect back to that move that Dana was prepared to make, it does begin to be a little bit more clear that he was playing chess, that he was ahead of times, that look, if I can't get an athlete to make this compelling, I'm going to have to find a sport to make this compelling. I'm going to have to take away some of Amanda's weapons and what she is used to make anybody on earth believe perhaps we're going to see a real competition here, and perhaps there's an opportunity that Amanda has both arms by her side as Bruce Buffer's announcing the winner at the end of the night. How do these things all tie together, and where do we go from here? Guys, we don't have to have the answer. We're not in the division. You now have two divisions of 145 and 135. You have twice the bodies. To figure this out, one athlete with one management team in one meeting somewhere could figure this out. To become the top contender is very easy to do. We've seen this since the Cyborg days. Raise your hand. Okay, great. You're in a rare spot. You're in a great opportunity. Now, to make a big fight is something totally different. And this is one of the spots that Amanda is fighting herself in unfairly because of her success.